It was a typical night on The Tonight Show. The lights were bright, the cameras rolling, and the audience buzzing with excitement. Millions were tuned in from around the world, laughing, clapping, and enjoying the usual mix of celebrity interviews, comedy, and music. But tonight, the energy in the studio was different. Something unexpected was about to happen. A young guest walked onto the stage. She was clearly nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her hair and clutched her notes. Every step felt hesitant, as if the stage itself was too big for her to handle. She smiled politely, trying to hide the anxiety that was bubbling just beneath the surface. As she sat down across from Johnny Carson, the laughter and chatter of the audience seemed to fade. All eyes were on her. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. She tried again, clearing her throat, but it wasn't enough. Her words started to falter, and before she realized it, tears began streaming down her cheeks. She looked at Johnny Carson, her face red, embarrassed, and full of vulnerability. I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I didn't mean to cry." Her hands shook as she wiped at her eyes, trying desperately to regain composure. The audience went silent. A hush fell over the studio. Even the live band paused. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The moment hung in the air like a delicate glass ornament, fragile and full of tension. Everyone could feel her fear, her shame, and the weight of her emotions. Johnny Carson, the seasoned host known for his wit and charm, leaned forward slightly. His expression softened. He didn't laugh, he didn't glance away, and he didn't make her feel small. He simply looked at her, fully present, as if he could feel her nerves and her heart racing. The cameras zoomed in on her trembling hands and her glistening eyes. The audience members in the front row exchanged glances, some whispering to each other. People in the back of the studio shifted in their seats, leaning forward, completely captivated. And then a thought ran through everyone watching. How will Johnny Carson respond? Will he mock her? Ignore her? Or will he do something no one expected? Have you ever cried in public? Comment yes if you can relate. The studio was silent. The young guest had just apologized for crying, and for a moment, it felt like time itself had stopped. The audience, usually so boisterous, sat frozen, holding their collective breath. The band had paused mid-tune. Even the stage crew, hidden behind the cameras, leaned forward, silently watching. Johnny Carson, the legendary host, remained seated across from her. He didn't smile yet. He didn't offer a joke to break the tension. He simply looked at her, eyes steady, calm, and filled with that rare combination of understanding and authority that made him a household name. The guest's hands trembled in her lap. She wiped her eyes again, ashamed that her emotions were visible to millions of people. I didn't mean to cry," she whispered again, barely audible, as if speaking louder would make the embarrassment even heavier. Her cheeks glistened under the studio lights, and the words, "I'm sorry," hung between them, fragile and raw. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody had expected this. Guests cried sometimes, but this was different. It wasn't tears of sadness or grief. It was vulnerability, nerves, a human moment caught unprepared in the glare of national television. Johnny Carson leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting lightly on his knees. His voice was low but clear, carrying across the stage and into every corner of the studio. "You don't have to apologize for showing your feelings," he said. The words rippled through the room like a shockwave. A few audience members whispered to each other. Others nodded slowly, wiping their own eyes without realizing it. The young guest froze, unsure whether she had heard correctly. The man whose humor had made her nervous, whose fame had intimidated her, was telling her that this was okay, that her humanity was okay. Her lips trembled as she tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Johnny waited. He didn't rush her. He didn't make her feel rushed or small. His calmness created a space for her emotions to exist without judgment. The audience was captivated. Cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing every flicker of doubt, every tear, every attempt to regain composure. The tension was electric. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the room, synchronizing with hers. Then Johnny added, softly but firmly, "Courage is not about hiding tears. Courage is feeling them and moving forward." A murmur ran through the audience. Heads nodded. Eyes widened. Some people instinctively reached for tissues. Some whispered to neighbors, "Wow, that's true." That's real courage. The young guest blinked rapidly, trying to absorb what he had just said. She was shaking, but not from fear anymore, from relief. From the realization that she didn't need to shrink to fit the expectations of the stage. She didn't need to hide the fact that she was human. She didn't need to apologize for showing her heart. Johnny paused, letting the words sink in. The audience leaned forward as if drawn by gravity itself, hanging on every moment of this rare interaction. It wasn't just a television moment. It was a life lesson unfolding live. Then Johnny's eyes flicked toward the cameras, and with a small smile, he addressed everyone watching at home. Remember, it's okay to feel. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to cry. What matters is what you do next, how you move forward. The young guest took a deep breath, shoulders trembling. But there was a new light in her eyes. Confidence, strength, gratitude. The kind of quiet dignity that comes from being understood, not judged. The audience erupted into applause, softly at first, then louder. The energy shifted from tension to awe, from nervousness to inspiration. People were on the edge of their seats, not because of drama or spectacle, but because of something far rarer, authentic human connection. The moment was being recorded, broadcast, and shared. Phones were raised. Social media notifications lit up. Comments began flooding in even before the show ended. And the thought crossed the minds of millions. In a world that shames emotions, this is revolutionary. Where are you watching this from? Comment your city or country below. Even backstage, crew members were whispering to each other. Did you see that? He handled it perfectly. The guest's hands finally stopped shaking. She looked at Johnny, and a tiny smile appeared through her tears. She nodded, as if to say thank you without words. And the camera captured it all. The silent acknowledgement, the lesson, the vulnerability, the courage. For that night, the audience didn't just witness a guest crying. They witnessed a masterclass in empathy, compassion, and the quiet, transformative power of kindness. And for the millions watching at home, it was a reminder. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is show your heart. And someone out there will remind you that it's okay to do so. The young guest sat frozen, unsure what to do next. The bright studio lights felt heavier now, illuminating every tear, every quiver in her hands, every flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Millions of viewers at home watched with bated breath. In that moment, it wasn't just a talk show, it was a stage for something deeper, something profoundly human. Johnny Carson, the seasoned host, didn't speak immediately. He didn't rush in with a joke to lighten the tension. He simply watched. His gaze was steady, warm, and understanding. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't awkward. It was intentional. He was giving her space, showing her that her emotions were valid, and that she didn't have to hide them. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry, she said, shaking her head. I didn't mean to cry on live television. I know this is unprofessional. Her words trembled as much as her hands. Johnny leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. His eyes softened. Then, in that quiet, gentle voice that could command attention without raising it, he said something that no one in the studio expected. You don't have to apologize for showing your feelings, he said. The audience collectively exhaled. Some murmured in surprise. Others whispered to each other, unable to fully comprehend the depth of his words. For a moment, the studio felt different, softer, warmer, safer. This was no longer just entertainment. This was a lesson in humanity unfolding live. The young guest blinked. She had never expected that. On countless late-night shows, nerves and laughter often masked the raw vulnerability of guests. But Johnny Carson made it clear. It was okay to be human. You see, Johnny continued, his voice calm but powerful. Courage is not about hiding tears. Courage is feeling them and moving forward. The words hit harder than any script or joke ever could. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Even the camera crew felt it, watching a moment that transcended television and touched something raw in the human heart. For the guest, something shifted inside her. The weight of embarrassment began to lift. Her trembling hands found steadiness. Her chest rose and fell with a renewed sense of calm. She had expected judgment, ridicule, maybe even a sharp remark. Instead, she received understanding, validation, respect. Johnny paused, letting the words settle. The audience, captivated, leaned forward. Every eye in the studio was glued to the stage. The live cameras captured the transformation. Her first timid smile through the tears, the tiny nod of acknowledgement as she realized she was not alone. And then he spoke again, softer this time, looking directly into her eyes. Remember, everyone watching tonight, it's okay to feel. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to cry. What matters most is what you do next. She swallowed hard, absorbing the wisdom in his words. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and gratitude. The audience applauded, softly at first, then louder, as if collectively realizing the weight of what had just happened. The energy in the room shifted entirely. People weren't just witnessing a guest cry. They were witnessing courage, empathy, and the power of understanding unfold live on stage. Cameras captured the sparkle in her eyes, the subtle straightening of her posture, the quiet strength that came from being seen and accepted exactly as she was. Who would you want to hear say this to you? Comment below. Backstage, crew members whispered to each other, amazed at how Johnny had handled it. Some said they had never seen anything like it in decades of live television. Viewers at home were tweeting, posting, and commenting within seconds. This is why he's a legend. That response was everything. For the young guest, this was more than a television appearance. It was a lesson she would carry forever. A reminder that vulnerability is not weakness. That tears are not shame. That showing your heart is a form of strength. And that sometimes, someone kind and empathetic is all it takes to make the world feel safe, even for just a moment. As the cameras panned to Johnny, he smiled gently, letting her gather herself. The audience erupted in another round of applause, and somewhere in that wave of clapping and murmuring, one truth became clear. Sometimes, the strongest people aren't those who hide their feelings. They're those who face them head-on and inspire others to do the same. The guest wiped her eyes again, but this time, it was a different kind of tear. One of relief, one of courage, one that said, without words, I am seen. I am understood. I am enough. The young guest sat quietly, absorbing Johnny Carson's words. The warmth in his voice, the patience in his gaze, and the sheer understanding behind his every word created a bubble of calm amidst the bright lights and live cameras. For the first time in what felt like hours, maybe even years, she could breathe. She didn't have to hide. She didn't have to pretend. She could simply be. The audience, too, was spellbound. Heads tilted forward, eyes fixed on the stage. People whispered to each other softly, in awe of what was unfolding. There was no laughter. No applause signs flashing to cue the crowd. Only the quiet, collective intake of breath that happens when something human and true touches everyone present. For the guest, this moment was surreal. Her hands, which had been trembling uncontrollably, were now clasped together in her lap. She wiped the remaining tears from her cheeks, but this time, her movements were different. There was no shame, no embarrassment, only relief and gratitude. She had feared judgment. She had feared being dismissed. Instead, she had found empathy, and the feeling was overwhelming. Johnny Carson leaned back in his chair slightly, watching her with quiet admiration. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He understood that sometimes, the greatest impact comes from simply holding space for someone else. Every second he remained patient. The audience felt the gravity of the moment deepen. The cameras moved closer, capturing her expressions, the subtle way her shoulders lifted as if a weight had been removed. The viewers at home felt it too, the kind of authenticity that transcends a television screen. Millions were watching, yet it felt intimate, personal. Everyone could see themselves in her nervousness, her fear, and now, her courage. She finally spoke, voice soft but steady. I thought I'd ruin everything. I thought I'd make a fool of myself in front of millions. She paused, swallowing hard, fighting for composure. But, thank you. Thank you for making me feel like it's okay to be human. A hush fell over the studio again, followed by a swell of applause that started small but grew steadily. People were clapping not out of obligation, but because they felt the weight of her words. The power of a genuine response to vulnerability was sweeping through the audience like a wave. Johnny smiled, his expression gentle, almost fatherly. You're welcome. Never apologize for feeling. Life is not about hiding your emotions. It's about experiencing them and learning from them. That's what makes you strong. Her eyes shone, and this time, it wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was pride. Pride in the courage it took to face the moment, to be honest, and to trust that someone, anyone, would see her as more than a guest on a show. The applause continued, some audience members even standing, moved by the sincerity of what had just occurred. The energy in the studio shifted. Laughter, music, and conversation returned slowly, but the underlying emotion remained. Everyone had felt it, the raw, human connection that rarely happens on live television. The young guest, who had begun the show feeling small, exposed, and terrified, now radiated a quiet confidence that was palpable. The cameras panned to Johnny once more. He gave a small, knowing nod, signaling that the moment was over, but its impact was far from it. For the audience, the crew, and the millions watching at home, this wasn't just a fleeting emotional beat. It was a lesson, a reminder that showing your emotions doesn't make you weak, it makes you brave. Backstage, whispers erupted among the staff. Did you see that? He didn't just comfort her. He taught her a lesson she'll never forget. Social media notifications began to spike immediately, as viewers tweeted and posted clips, sharing the raw, authentic human moment with their friends and family. Have you ever experienced a moment like this, where someone's words changed everything for you? Comment yes if this touched your heart. The young guest took a deep, steadying breath. She smiled fully for the first time since stepping onto the stage, feeling lighter, braver, and more seen than she ever had before. The cameras captured it all, the transformation, the courage, and the beauty of a moment where vulnerability met compassion head-on. That night, the audience left the studio changed, the crew whispered about it for days, and viewers at home carried the lesson into their own lives. Because this was more than television. This was humanity in motion, a reminder that kindness, patience, and understanding could transform even the most vulnerable moment into a triumph of the heart. The studio was quiet, yet charged with emotion. Every eye remained fixed on the stage. The young guest had regained composure, but her vulnerability still lingered, a tangible presence that hung in the air. Johnny Carson, the master of late-night television, now leaned forward, his voice steady, commanding, yet filled with warmth. "You see," he began, "we often hide what we feel. We apologize for showing emotions because we think the world will judge us. But courage isn't about hiding. Courage is about facing the truth of who you are, even when it's uncomfortable." The audience listened intently. Some leaned forward in their seats. Others whispered to their neighbors, as if seeking affirmation of the truth in his words. The live cameras captured every reaction, faces glistening with tears, mouths slightly open in awe, hands pressed together as if to hold the moment in place. The young guest's eyes widened. She felt the weight of his message sinking into her very bones. It wasn't just comfort anymore. It was a lesson in authenticity, bravery, and the dignity of being human. She had been embarrassed for her tears, but now she realized they were a sign of strength, not weakness. Johnny continued, his tone firm but gentle. "There's a misconception that strength means hiding your feelings. It doesn't. True strength comes from feeling, understanding, and then moving forward. Showing vulnerability is not defeat, it's honesty. It's being human. And that, my friends, is something to be proud of." A hush fell over the audience. The room seemed suspended in time. Even the stage lights felt like they had dimmed slightly, focusing everyone's attention on the gravity of the words being spoken. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was a life lesson unfolding live before millions. The young guest took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She could feel the audience's energy, their empathy, and their shared understanding. She realized that what she had feared, judgment, ridicule, shame, was replaced by connection, validation, and support. The tension that had gripped her since stepping on the stage was slowly dissolving. Johnny's voice softened, almost tenderly. "Remember, showing emotion is not a weakness. Apologizing for your humanity is unnecessary. What you feel matters. What you express matters. And it can change the way others see themselves, too." The audience nodded collectively. Some wiped tears from their eyes, touched by the sincerity of the moment. Cameras captured subtle gestures, the young guest straightening her back, a small smile forming, the glimmer of relief in her eyes. Every detail was being etched into the minds of viewers at home, who were now experiencing this emotional awakening along with the studio audience. Has someone ever said words to you that completely changed your perspective? Comment yes if you've experienced that. Johnny leaned back slightly, allowing the weight of his message to resonate. Life doesn't always give us easy moments, but it does give us opportunities to be honest, to be brave, and to face our emotions without fear. Those moments define us, not hiding from them. The audience erupted into soft, appreciative applause. Some stood up, moved by the profound simplicity of his wisdom. The young guest finally let herself exhale fully. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled, not timidly, but with quiet pride. The shame she had carried moments ago was gone. In its place was recognition of her own courage, and the courage of countless others watching from home. Even the studio crew, hidden behind cameras and equipment, felt the impact. They whispered to one another, awestruck. Social media notifications began flooding as viewers shared clips and moments of the heartfelt exchange, praising not just the guest, but Johnny Carson's ability to teach such a powerful lesson on national television. The energy in the studio shifted from suspense to inspiration. This was more than a show. It was a demonstration of human connection, of empathy, and of the transformative power of words. And for the young guest, the lesson would never be forgotten. True courage is not the absence of tears. True courage is acknowledging them, accepting them, and moving forward. As Johnny Carson's words echoed through the studio, a final thought lingered in the minds of everyone watching. Sometimes, the simplest truths, spoken with patience and care, can leave the most lasting impact. And in that quiet, powerful way, a single conversation on a late-night show became a moment that would inspire countless people for years to come. The young guest had regained her composure, but the emotional weight of the moment lingered like a warm, fragile glow in the studio. Johnny Carson's words had not just comforted her, they had inspired the entire room. Audience members leaned back in their seats, whispering softly to one another, as if still processing the depth of what they had just witnessed. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every detail. The way her hands rested gently in her lap, the soft smile that began to form, and the subtle sparkle of tears that remained in her eyes. For millions watching at home, this was more than a television appearance. It was a lesson in courage, empathy, and authenticity. Social media notifications began to light up within seconds. Tweets, comments, and posts flooded the internet. Clips of the young guest crying, followed by Johnny Carson's gentle, life-affirming words, were shared repeatedly, each viewer struck by the rare honesty unfolding live on stage. Johnny, ever the consummate host, leaned slightly forward, his voice calm, measured, and sincere. "Remember," he said, "you never have to apologize for feeling. Your emotions are valid. Your heart is valid. And your courage is in showing it, even when it feels impossible." The audience was silent again, hanging on his words. Then, slowly, soft applause began, growing steadily into a wave of appreciation. Some stood, moved beyond the point of mere admiration. Others whispered quietly to their neighbors, "This is real. This is human. This is powerful." The young guest's lips trembled, but her expression had changed. There was no longer fear, no trace of shame. She had been humbled by the moment, yet empowered by it too. She felt seen. She felt understood. And she realized that her vulnerability had, paradoxically, made her stronger. Backstage, crew members exchanged glances, their whispers audible even to those paying close attention. "Did you see that?" He didn't just comfort her. He elevated the whole conversation about humanity, courage, and respect. Social media posts confirmed it. Clips were going viral, millions were sharing, and the story of a young guest crying on live TV and being met with compassion was trending worldwide. If you think Johnny handled this perfectly, type in the comments. Would you have stayed calm like the guest? As the applause continued, Johnny Carson allowed a pause. He didn't rush the moment. He didn't need to. The silence after his words was as meaningful as his speech. People in the audience were wiping their eyes, moved not only by the guest's vulnerability, but by Johnny's extraordinary empathy. He had taken what could have been an embarrassing situation and transformed it into a lesson in humanity, leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. The cameras shifted, capturing the broader scene. Audience members were leaning forward, some with tears in their eyes. Phones were held high, recording every second. The energy was electric yet tender, a rare combination that can only occur when something profoundly human unfolds before a crowd. The guest herself felt a new strength rising from within. She no longer wished she had hidden her emotions. She no longer felt the shame of crying under the spotlight. Instead, she realized that her bravery, simply by being herself, being authentic, and allowing her feelings to be seen, had inspired countless others. For the first time that night, she smiled freely, her tears now a symbol of courage, not embarrassment. As social media exploded, clips of the moment circulated globally. News outlets, talk shows, and millions of online viewers highlighted the story. Young guest apologizes for crying on The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson's response leaves everyone in tears. Johnny's words became a viral mantra, a reminder of the power of empathy and kindness in a world often quick to judge. Even the crew, the audience, and the guest felt it. The realization that this was a rare, unforgettable moment in television history. It was not only entertainment, it was inspiration. It was a lesson in human dignity and courage that transcended the screen and reached viewers' hearts around the globe. The young guest finally rose from her chair as the segment concluded. Cameras captured the final, lingering smile, the one that said it all without words. I am seen. I am heard. I am enough. The applause that followed was thunderous, the studio alive with appreciation, admiration, and respect. Tag someone who needs to hear this message today. Share it to remind someone it's okay to feel and show courage. That night, as the audience left the studio and millions watched online, one truth became undeniable. Sometimes, the most powerful moments are born from vulnerability. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come not from scripted lines, but from genuine human connection. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness, spoken quietly on a late-night stage, can ripple across the world, inspiring millions to embrace their courage, empathy, and humanity. The studio lights dimmed, but the moment lingered. The young guest had left the stage, her tears replaced by a quiet, confident smile. Johnny Carson remained seated, a gentle nod acknowledging the courage she had shown. But the impact didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. It was just beginning. Within minutes, clips of the encounter began circulating online. Millions of viewers across the globe watched the moment. The young guest apologizing for crying, Johnny Carson's calm, empathetic response, and the applause that followed. Social media lit up with reactions, tweets, posts, and videos praising both her bravery and his kindness. The story went viral almost instantly. News outlets picked it up. Headlines like, "She apologized for crying," and Johnny Carson's response left everyone in tears. Late-night legend teaches a lesson in courage on live TV. A cry on stage turns into a global moment of inspiration. Millions of people shared their personal reflections. Some admitted they had been afraid to show emotions themselves. Others recounted moments where a simple act of understanding had changed their lives. The guest's vulnerability had sparked a worldwide conversation about courage, empathy, and humanity. Back in the studio, crew members smiled quietly. They had witnessed history, not for entertainment value, but for the profound human truth it revealed. Johnny Carson had done more than host a show. He had reminded the world that showing emotion is strength, not weakness. He had created a space where vulnerability was celebrated, not ridiculed. The young guest, still processing the attention, realized the ripple effect of her simple act of authenticity. She hadn't planned to go viral. She hadn't expected millions to witness her tears or hear Johnny's words. But the lesson was clear. Courage and honesty resonate. They inspire. And sometimes, the smallest acts, like allowing yourself to be human on stage, can create the largest waves. Viewers across the world commented, tagged friends, and shared the story as a reminder that it's okay to feel. The viral video was more than entertainment. It became a teaching moment. Schools, workplaces, and communities began sharing it, showing how empathy and kindness could transform fear into courage, shame into pride. If you believe showing emotions is a sign of strength, type courage in the comments and share this story to inspire someone today. Even weeks later, the story continued to spread. People reflected on the lessons learned from a simple, genuine moment on live television. It reminded the world that sometimes Vulnerability is the most powerful force we have. It reminded millions that empathy, patience, and understanding are tools that can change lives. Johnny Carson's response had done more than calm a guest. It had created a global movement of compassion, and the young guest, once nervous and embarrassed, had become a symbol of bravery, proof that even small acts of authenticity can inspire countless others. The final takeaway was simple, yet profound. Strength is not hiding your tears. Strength is facing them, acknowledging them, and moving forward with courage. And when someone meets that courage with empathy, the impact can be extraordinary, leaving a mark on the world that lasts far longer than the moment itself. As the screen faded to the credits, one thought lingered in the minds of everyone watching. Sometimes the most unforgettable lessons come not from actions, but from understanding and the courage to be human.